Thank you so much to the organizers for inviting me here. It's an honor to be here, and also to the audience. Thank you for your patience and interest. Tonight I'm not going to talk about my curatorial practices, but about a show that really stayed with me for a long time. I saw this exhibition a couple of months ago, and somehow I'm still thinking about it because it had a big impact on me. It was because of the topics that it addressed, which were very sensitive topics and addressed in a sensitive manner, and also because of the antagonism between the medium of the exhibition, the context of the exhibition, and the larger political context it was shown in. The exhibition was organized in the Ludwig Museum in Budapest, in Hungary. And as we all know, we live in a world torn apart by conflicts and wars, and sometimes it feels like we just live in some sort of distorted dictator's fantasy, devoid of any humanity. And sometimes when you think it cannot get any worse, it does. This may be a bleak worldview, especially when you think of the context in Hungary, which is probably one of the most restrictive countries in the European Union, especially when it comes to the field of art and media. And according to a report that was published in 2022 by the Artistic Freedom Initiative, artistic freedom in Hungary has been systematically suppressed by the right-wing government, resulting in self-censorship and censorship, and the migration of cultural workers to more permissive countries. The mechanism of artistic suppression, according to the report, include federal funding being dependent on the political approval of key cultural institutions' directors, and complex bureaucratic control of the artistic sector through Fidesz, the ruling party. In this tension climate, the exhibition Handle with Care, beautifully curated by Rita Dabi-Farkas and Victoria Popovic, referred to the act of caring as something common among all human beings, whether on an individual self-care or a collective, for example, caring for our elders level. On a larger scale, care has relevant global dimensions, such as care migration, which often occurs in Eastern Europe and in other economically less developed countries. Handle with Care addressed the many faces of our increasingly unstable world, where the gaps between social and economic classes are becoming wider and wider, exposing the vulnerable to new challenges and adversities. At the same time, the exhibition aimed to describe and criticize the cracks in our social and economic systems in a poetic manner, something that was reflected in the chosen artworks so well that I often had to stop and weep for a few minutes before continuing my visit. Many of the presented artistic positions touched me through their simultaneous subtlety, fragility, and strength. In the end, they made me wonder whether society will be able to finally heal itself, or rather if all these inequalities are just going to continue to deepen, leaving the affected people needing to find new ways of being even more resilient. Right since the beginning of the exhibition, Olah Maras, alias Omaras' works, led me through the space as an intersectional red thread connecting different sensitive topics, such as racism, institutional or otherwise, social exclusion, and motherhood. This is one of the paintings that was shown, and it addresses the systematic humiliation and exclusion of Roma children in the schooling system. This is a portrait of Omara. She died sadly a couple of years ago, but she was a force of nature, a self-taught Romani artist who started creating in her 40s, using art as a healing tool to overcome the trauma caused by illness, grief, and humiliation. Her small format works exude frustration with the corrupt system that push Roma and other disadvantaged people to the margins of society, exposing heartless practices with a defiant, even aggressive tone. Going from being a cleaning lady to an internationally acclaimed artist, Omara used her voice to express the anger and pain of the voiceless, of the oppressed. Some of her works presented in the show illustrated the everyday racism one can find in schools, nurseries, and social services, criticizing these institutional care systems and underlining again the differences in distributing protection. For example, a painting from her blue period titled Little Mara in First Grade, 1952, depicts a subjective experience. One can see in the foreground two schoolgirls and a teacher next to them. While one of the two schoolgirls with twisted hair and fair skin watches amusedly, the other one with dark skin is being brutishly grabbed by her wild hair by a teacher who forces her head down to the opened book in front of her. Two girls silently watch her from the back of the classroom. The inscription, written in thick lines in Hungarian, translates as, "But if she doesn't tolerate it, she'll end up in a reform school like other gypsy kids." While the painting suggests the resilience Roma children need to be capable of interacting with the majority population, it also reminds us that racism in Eastern Europe schools is sadly as current as a topic nowadays as it was 70 years ago. The topic of racial segregation also constitutes the background of Phil Collins' heartfelt video for Kate Le Bon's touching single Home to You, which in my opinion served as a soundtrack for the entire exhibition. The video was filmed in Lunik 9, a suburb of Košice, Slovakia, which is home to one of the largest Roma communities in the country. Housing approximately 3 times more people than it was originally intended to, the ghetto-like neighborhood has deplorable living and health conditions. A failed communist-era relocation project, whose purpose was to force Roma to assimilate, the conditions in Lunik 9 worsened even more in the 2000s, when the local authorities decided to cram all sorts of marginalized people there, including homeless citizens, which created even more problems. However, the video doesn't depict the grim or sensational images that the media usually shows. Instead, it presents members of the community and their everyday joys, approaching hardships with lightness and dignity. Throughout the video, a sense of solidarity among the community members prevails, whether it's about helping each other, taking care of the children, or simply coexisting together. It was one of the many examples in the show that demonstrated that art has the power to expose different perspectives and to decisively sensitize us when introduced to painful topics. It has also practical implications. In this case, a part of the proceeds from Kate Le Bon's album was redirected to an educational initiative aimed at connecting young people from Lunik 9 with people from other parts of the city, providing them with schooling in filmmaking. And I wanted to show you an excerpt of the video, but maybe you can watch it later in peace at home to understand better how this soundtrack for the exhibition worked. Solidarity and ways of being, living, and working together continued to be addressed in the next room, where one could see the installation of Czech artist Kateřina Šeda, No Light. Conducted over the course of more than 10 years, the project centers around industrialization at the cost of leading a traditional way of life, as was the case for the inhabitants of Nošovice, a village in the Czech Republic, where a huge Hyundai automobile plant was built right in the center of the community, completely disrupting it. And you can see this Hyundai plant in the picture, and basically this is the village on the left and on the right, and like right in the middle of it. The industrial site created something akin to a black hole in the village, dividing it in two and causing many people to relocate or to not be on speaking terms with each other anymore. The title No Light comes from the response of the villagers when asked about the Hyundai plant, as they claimed to perceive no light at the end of the tunnel. Their hopelessness was what motivated Šeda to conduct the collaborative project, giving locals the opportunity to have some agency and to reconnect with each other. In the exhibition, triangular textiles were hung on wires as if they had been left out to dry. The colorful pieces featured a variety of organic, floral, and figurative motifs, all punctured by a hole or multiple holes right in the center of the decoration. The hole became a leitmotif for Šeda's installation, being at the center of hand-sewn household items, which would normally be part of a bride's dowry. The handmade textiles were created by women from Nošovice, encouraging a sense of belonging and shared creativity in an attempt to combat the results that mass industrialization has globally on local cultures and nature. And something that we mentioned today quite often is the precarious structure of the art field itself, especially in Eastern Europe. a highly competitive area with limited resources, often encouraging toxic, ego-fueled power dynamics among its members. Touching on this, Norbert Ola created a site-specific installation resembling a brick wall where he mapped everyday anxieties of the artists. He wrote on each brick different nouns in Hungarian, relating to factors that have a great influence on the modes of production and in the artistic field, such as politics, museum, sponsor, or critique. Suggestively titled The Anxious Field of Art, the work questions self-imposed limits and proposes their deconstruction. By visualizing the fears, one can understand that sometimes they are just words that shouldn't hold such a big power over our psyches. A small-scale video of the artist himself wishing around 250 of his young artist colleagues good luck and good fortune accompanies the installation, a gesture of care and support that is not often encountered in this field. And instead of a conclusion, I would like to mention Kata Tranker's sculpture, Riders of Mother Nature, made out of paper, hemp, wood, and silk. The artwork depicts a humanoid creature that brings together ancient attributes of the feminine, recalling a mythological figure carrying two smaller female characters on her back. Everything in the scene is interconnected. The two riders hold each other, with the one in the front supporting herself on the back of Mother Nature. The sculpture is reminiscent of equestrian statues that we often encounter in public spaces. In contrast to these masculine symbols of power and force, Tranker's work suggests a monument for the nurturing caregivers who carry the world on their backs. The two figures do not have a stiff, upright position, suggesting overbearing confidence as we usually see in equestrian statues. They look rather tired and worried, like ancestral mothers or goddesses. One of them is holding up a large purple flag, one of the least used colors for national flags. It could be the flag of a newly formed nation based on values and ideas different to those that have more typically led us into so many wars and conflicts. Thank you.